12 games into the season, New Orleans Saints have been outscored 89-22 in first quarters. 89-22. Against probable playoff teams, it's even worse. We're outscored 79-19. After 12 straight game of digging these holes, coaching staff still hasn't fixed it. So today I'm going to break down exactly why I think this team loses every single first quarter and why nobody in the building is able to do anything about it. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So this video was born out of frustration, aggravation, this close to actually being a rant on trying to figure out why we have so many slow starts. I kind of started and more or less stopped with when I was looking at points scored and doing some breakdowns on that. And it's horrific. It's 89 points opponents have scored on us, 22 we've scored on them in those 12 games. Basically, we score a point, we give up 4. So I started looking at the second through fourth quarters for those 12 games total. We score 160, we give up 206 points. Still not good, right? But hell of a lot closer over the final 45 minutes of the game than the first 15 as far as the differential in the points being scored. So he said, well, maybe the better teams are skewing this because I know we played quite a few playoff contending, if not actual playoff legit teams. And I'm kind of surprised to find that, 8 right now or would be in the playoffs or on the verge of a wild card right now going into week 14. Patriots, Bills, Bears, Rams, Seahawks, Buccaneers, 49ers, and Panthers. First quarter of those games, opponent scored 79, we scored 19. So looking at only 4 non-playoff teams, all with losing records, all about right about the same level, I think, as the Saints are this year in a lot of ways. Arizona, Miami, Atlanta, New York Giants. They've scored 20, we've scored 3 in those 4 games. See, it's just kind of amazing going, look, how's this happening each and every week? If we do this for 5 more games, could we be the first team in NFL history that never won a first quarter when the horn sounded to go to the second quarter? We were losing all of them. Because so far, we're losing 12. We're 0 for 12. We've been in 4 games that we lost by 1 score, not 8 or less points, right? Only Arizona outscored us over the next 3 quarters. The other 3 were Frisco, who we outscored 21-20, came up short. New England, we outscored 13-11, came up short. Miami, 17-14, came up short. So you said, let me go look at the multi-score losses. Well, outside of New England and Frisco, that's where most of the playoff teams show up, all but one. Seattle, Buffalo, Chicago, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles Rams, and then Atlanta, who's really a team we could have had a chance to beat that beat us badly. And in every single one of these games, we were down in the first quarter. The next 3 quarters, they outscored us by 9 or more, 2 scores or more, except for one team, Buffalo, only outscored us 17-12. So you look at the 2 wins we had, the Giants, who's clearly on our level right now, they're projected to have the 2nd pick overall in the draft next year, and we're projected to have the 3rd, and we actually got a win on them. We were down 7-3, outscored them 23-7 over the next 3 quarters. Carolina, who may sneak into the playoff as a wild card, down 7-3 to them, outscored them 14-0 over the final 3. So there is no rhyme or reason to the single score games, that the 8 or less where we were only 1 score down with a chance to tie or win on our last drive on, I think, all of them. The multi-score losses where all but one's playoff teams have basically sculled us, and the 2 we won come out of both categories. And in none of them could we come out of the first quarter with a lead. See, to me, it always felt like it this is some type of coaching issue where you're not basically showing up prepared to play football. And we're going to start there. Number 2 on the rundown list, right? But yeah, it's not only them. We will get to the players after that. But I think it's mostly offense. I think the defense, for the most part, played pretty well in those games. You had the issue with Seattle. You got basically blown out of there, and one of those was a special teams touchdown, and they're 21 points in the first quarter. And it got to be a little careful how I say this because there were games where 7-0 or 3-0 we're down at the end of the first quarter. But when the quarter ended, the defense was in the process of giving up yet another scoring drive. So early in the second, we were down multiple scores. So it's kind of a trade-off there. But you think, generally speaking, some of the stuff I've already talked about, the offense, the defense falls into somewhat. But for the most part, I think they're okay. I think most of the problem is the offense. Most of the blame, in my opinion, goes to Kellen Moore. Because if you were to ask somebody was from another team, another fan asked you, "Hey, what's your offensive philosophy? What's your identity? What phrase kind of describes your offense?" Like, for example, Kyle, a 49er fan, would probably say something along Kyle Shanahan, wide zone based scheme in the running game, West Coast passing concepts. And everybody kind of knows what he's talking about. And they put all his little eye candy, sprinkles, and everything on it to try to help confuse the defense, right? And that's kind of what we were last year in Clint Kubiak's offense, who was out of that Shanahan trade. That's why I bring him up. Clearly knew what we were getting when we hired him to run the offense. Clearly what we tried to run all year. I don't know what that identity or philosophy for Kellen Moore was coming in, except to be multiple. He talked about being able to run inside, outside zone, and gap all in the running game and some passing concepts very early on, but figured this would meld down into some type of identity, and I don't think it has. So I don't think you can, and God, I hate to say this, but it just reminds me so much of when our offense was being run by Pete Carmichael. What are we exactly as an offense? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the philosophy? What's the identity? I can't tell. I really can't. So you're talking about getting prepared to play and not lose a first quarter. You're already starting at what are we doing? What's the identity? What's we're basing everything on? So now we have to game plan for the week. Well, what's the foundation? Because that's when we're talking about the scheme or identity of the offense. If everything's getting built off of that, does anybody know what it is? Have they clearly defined it inside the building and just not clued anybody else in, right? I don't know. But it doesn't seem like it. So when you get into that game plan of what concepts you're going to bring in, which kind of devolves into, well, we're going to script some plays to make sure we stay. Yeah, this hasn't happened. Make sure we get off to that hot start on offense. What are you scripting? In the case of us last year in that Shanahan base, our bread and butter play was the wide zone run, right? Tried to run as many times as we could in the game, ran it early and often, tried to establish everything else we wanted to do off of that. Send the message. You're not going to stop this. And if you don't stop this, oh, now all this other stuff's coming at you. I don't even know what our bread and butter plays are, running game or passing game. I don't know what our true passing concepts are. Makes me wonder if the players know. So how can the players confidently go into a game with the basis of what we worked on all week working? So I think the fundamental problem is that clear identity of what we're trying to do on offense and to a slightly smaller extent on defense. Actually, much smaller than defense. I think they kind of got it figured out and worked through it, and they know where they're going. And I think the offense is still just lost. And it makes zero sense to me that this hasn't been done and established. And I don't know if you can do it this late in the season. 2/3 of the season is over. You play 12 games. But until they do, I don't see how you can fix this problem. And to me, yeah, I know Nussmeier's the offensive coordinator, and he's going to take some blame for this and should, and so should some of the position coaches. But ultimately, this is Kellen Moore's deal. This is his baby, this offense. He's still calling the plays. He's got to take ownership of this. And I put most of this problem squarely on his shoulders. And he wants to be the head coach. He's got to fix this. It brings to me a little bit of that coordinator having to make the leap. Because when he was a coordinator, Nick Sirianni last year, Staley for the 1 year in San Diego, coaches in Dallas that he worked for. There's always a boss saying, no, that's not what we're going to do. No, this, no, yes, helping make the ultimate decisions. And I don't think I'm beginning to wonder without that oversight over him, or are we having a problem here? 12 games in a row. The answer seems to be yes. But look, it's not all the coaches, because you can see on the rundown sheet, we need to talk about some players needing to step up too. Now, maybe a little chicken or the egg, the play in the first quarter by players, and you know what I'm talking about, the mental mistakes, the physical mistakes, you know, penalties, uh, pre-snap especially, turnovers, missed assignments on defense, especially in coverage, or run gap responsibility leading to explosive plays, missed assignments on offense and blocking scheme, or not being able to make the block that leads to the sack or the forced fumble or whatever. And I bring that up for a reason because, yeah, technically Devon Vele, and got to like the young man leading off his time after the game, bringing that up before he talked about the amazing day he had catching the ball. That, yeah, I didn't get that block. It was that player that came around and strip sack Tyler Shuck, and they recovered the ball and got points off of it. I'm still trying to figure out why we had our wide receiver in that instance trying to handle a pass blocking. I don't know what the scheme, the philosophy was there. I see a lot of this. So ultimately, it was his mistake, but did the coaches do the best job of putting him in a position to do it? So some of this falls on players, but how much of this stuff that players are doing that I've been banging on them since week one about it, kind of making me pause back and going, scheme, concept, play call, all the stuff we're talking about, not kind of having that identity, not being able to go in week out, week in, week out, preparing for a game and going, we do X, Y, and Z every single game, multiple times. Everybody knows it. We're still able to do it. That's how we build the rest of our offense around it, in game planning for whatever that defense is going to throw at us, and make adjustments from there. I don't know. It really is chicken and the egg in my mind. It's making me rethink a lot of things. Now, however, the players absolutely still do stuff when things are going right. And you can go back through. I was just rolling through while I was doing all my research in the first quarter. Yes, it's clearly evident at times we had early offense going or early defense going in some cases through that first quarter, and then something dumb happens. Whatever that something is, normally the result of either mental error by the player, pre-snap penalty by the player, physical errors, missed block, missed tackles, missed gap assignment, whatever. So on offense, a drive stalls, and on defense, we give up an explosive play that leads to points. You see it every first quarter of all 12 of those games. So some of that may be on the coaches putting the players in bad position, but there's still a large chunk of that's on the players themselves, that in some cases the coaches kind of had them in the right position until they screwed up. I think it's a give and take. But if you're going to put percentages on it, 70-30 maybe coaching staff, 60-40, somewhere in there. Because ultimately, even some of those mistakes the players are making, coaches have some power over benching a guy or making changes or whatever they need to do if repeat offenders keep repeating the offense. So The last thing I'm going to say on this, and just real quick, is I specifically, I don't know how to fix it because it's just mind boggling to me how you got yourself in this position in the first place. Where, what are we? What are we trying to do? What defines us as an offense? And again, yeah, a little bit what defines us as a defense. But I can't totally bang on the coaching staff and the players because I think, coaching staff has done a good job of making adjustments, getting us back in game. That's obvious. Players have not quit. They're still trying to bang this thing out and win football games, even to the closing minutes. No mutinies, no business decisions, none of that stuff that we saw in the last couple of years at the end of the season so far. So I want to hope this does get figured out. I'd like to see it figured out this year before it gets to a situation where it starts looking more and more hopeless and you may start losing the locker room or messing with some of the gains you made in developing some young players on both sides of the ball. I think that's the real big issue. We're not going to win enough games to make the playoffs. In fact, we've already been mathematically eliminated. You'd like to win some and build on something for next year, especially coming down the stretch. But above all, I've been the guy blaming the players trying to play 4 quarters and not enough emphasis on the coaches putting them in a position to do it. Shame on me. Correcting that now. So I got to say, Kellen Moore and the coaching staff, have, have my eyes on you. Get this thing fixed to the best of your ability and make sure it doesn't happen at all next year. 12 games in a row is a trend, and it's a trend that's quickly becoming a major problem. So 12 games, 89-22 in the first quarters of those 12 games. Seems to be zero solutions coming from the coaching staff and zero chance you're going to be able to fix it. I think to you solve that identity philosophy kind of scheme problem on the offense and probably nail it down a little bit on the defense, although I think that's been trending in the right direction for the most part. But having this first quarter problem, that's not rebuilding. That's or not a failure in the rebuilding plan. I think it's more in the failure to prepare your team week to week. I think it falls mostly on the offense, and I think that falls almost solely on Kellen Moore's shoulders. And he's got to figure out a way to fix it. Now, try to end these videos on or trying to be positive. And I actually delayed this video because this was going to be more of a rant. As I dug into this deeper, especially with the numbers, I was getting more and more ticked off going, this is unbelievable. But I think for the most part, I do want to give both players and coaches who I really wanted to bang on more than I actually did. Coaches do a good job of making adjustments, and I think a lot of the work that they've done to rebuild this team outside of this first quarter problem has been effectively moving in the right direction, including developing younger players. And you think the players have played hard. In the past few seasons, we've seen mutinies and um, players making business decisions basically in the last part of the year, as Bobby Hebert once said, with everything packed in the U-Haul, waiting for the last game to end so they could go home type scenario. I don't feel like we're getting any of that from this team. I think they're playing hard. The coaches have the locker room, and the players aren't giving up. Good things. But if you don't fix this problem, or at least show that you're capable of fixing it, I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to hold that together. Because at some point, the players, again, they're not dumb. They can see what's going on and go, man, this isn't working. You never want to go down that road. So, biggest problem is other than the obvious, fix the identity, the scheme problems, and then everything coming down after it. I don't know how you start doing that. Um, so give me some ideas down in the comments. My best is, like I said, scale it down to simplified number of running plays and passing plays, and let's see if we can efficiently get out there and run the offense with that. But I don't even know if that's enough of an A to do right now at this point in the season. So basically 2/3 over. But Let me know what you think. Tell me in the comments. Some of the ideas I rejected was moving on from coaches. Again, I think the coaches still have the locker room, so I don't think that would work. Um, you know, bench players, maybe in some instances, especially with repeat offenders, severe repeat offenders, or I don't know, having a discussion with the front office and releasing them outright may be an option also. But I don't know if that at the core solves the problem of who are we, and more importantly, what's the definition of what we're trying to do offensively. So probably going to do a little Friday breakdown video on some of the up and coming players. Not going to do the preview because we're playing Tampa Bay for the second time this year, and all that goes out the window if we don't solve this freaking first quarter getting our asses kicked problem. So that continues. Doesn't matter what the scheme is against a good team like Tampa Bay. They're going to bury us just like they did in the Dome a few weeks ago. So look forward to a little more video on some of the younger guys, promising guys. That'll be out Friday. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.